We are back with part two of a uniquely special episode to me because today we are continuing our conversation with retired Army officer Dr. Douglas Waldrop, a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, also known as my dad. As you probably know by now, my upbringing as a military kid sparked the idea of creating the Partners of Commercial Fishermen community in the first place. My ultimate goal is to learn ways to best support us through fishing seasons and beyond, and this begins with learning how to nurture our mental health. In part two, we touch on mental health professionals and deciding which ones may be the best fit for you and how to choose. How to communicate and express to your partner if you're feeling underappreciated or a lack of connection or feeling overwhelmed, and the common thread that has helped his patients in his 30-plus year career. And it's something we can offer to each other starting today. I really loved getting to know my father in a professional setting like this. And when we began recording, it was almost as if you could see us switch roles from father-daughter to doctor and community leader. And I know I definitely felt it. As I mentioned before, I learned compassion from both of my parents, yet I get my sentimentality from my dad, and maybe you'll hear it here. I hope you enjoy the last of a two-part series on how we can maintain a healthy relationship with our mental health. As always, thank you for being here, and thank you, Dad, for taking time to be with our awesome community. I love you, Dad. Let's dive in.
I recently did therapy, virtual therapy, and yeah, I was surprised to know that we don't, it's not only just going deep into challenges of your life, it could also be great advice for everyday things like sleeping and managing anxiety, like baby steps to get to just function in everyday life. And yeah, I wanted to know, actually, I have a question about, because the word psychiatrist and psychologist, therapist, counselor, people get confused about what he represents. So when does one go to a psychiatrist versus when does one go to a psychologist?
Okay, that's a good question. I get that myself. Everybody, we all have a different set of training and a different background in training, and that's a positive thing about all the diverse mental health professionals out there. Some psychiatrists will do only medication, so they usually will get a referral from another provider, typically a therapist, who says, my client has depression and we're just not able to do it with talk therapy or cognitive behavioral therapy. We need a little bit of help with medication. Could you help with that? And then you develop hopefully a professional work relationship so that you're doing medication, keeping the therapist up to date. Therapists are keeping you up to date as to how that person's doing, and you can work together to get that through. Psychiatrists can do that, can do the therapy and the medicine, but typically psychologists have probably a full array of therapeutic practices that they've learned, and so they would be the masters of that. The other thing psychologists do is testing, and testing is extremely important. When you hear about people who may have cognitive deficits, like we recently had a politician we were concerned about. And so you need to have testing. What is that exactly wrong? Because someone who's depressed can look like they're having cognitive problems, not able to think things through. And then someone with a brain illness, strong brain illness, or brain damage or a stroke can have the similar cognitive problems, but you treat them differently. And a psychologist is able to test for that and find out what it could be best for that person. So, and testing is important for the kids too. So, now therapists, and there's many different therapists, and there's various levels of award. What am I trying to think of? Accreditation. That's what I'm trying to think of. There are some therapists who concentrate in substance abuse, so they stick with that, and they're very helpful in helping people get through their program or what they're doing. There are licensed clinical counselors who do the things like you were talking about. I don't want to say they typically do the day-to-day things, because that's not true. Depending on their training and their expertise and their desire, they could even do psychoanalysis if they want to. You don't have to be a psychiatrist to do psychoanalysis, but they offer a different level of therapy. The other thing is that these different expertises also pay differently, so you may need to look at that. And insurance will pay for some, they won't pay for the others. So it depends. So when you feel like you need to see somebody, there's various ways of figuring out, gee, what level should I do this with? In general, people have outlets that they can talk to about their mental health stuff. Some people have spiritual outlets, and so they can talk to them about it. Typically, a spiritual leader in a group has experience of talking with folks who are going through difficult things, and then well, I think we'll work on the spiritual stuff, but I think you might need to work on this with a cognitive behavioral therapist. You might be better with that. And so, and then I'm thinking that, you had that trauma, maybe you need to go get a medical workup and have a psychiatrist work with your primary care physician. So you can talk to people in a spiritual group, good friends that you trust. Some people have teachers, some workmates, and so or friends who have been through therapy themselves. How did you do it? What'd you do? But if you go to any of these levels, they'll do an intake. Typically, they'll talk to you at first, and they can help guide you to, like, yes, I can help you with this, but you might need this, and I don't do that. I don't do that type of therapy, or I don't prescribe medications. So I guess that's is that help?
Yeah, no, it is. So what I'm getting is, as a psychiatrist, you have like you're dealing with more maybe serious, like quote unquote serious, but more maybe serious mental health, maybe disorders or issues or traumas.
I think so. Yeah, I think yeah. Even though it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, you can hear psychiatrists on the radio all the time, and they're not doing anything but doing radio psychiatry. But I think in general, and this I guess I'm biased.
Me too.
You tend to. I mean, we do. I mean, we do. Mind, body, biopsychosocial, and how does that come together? And we deal with all of that stuff. We may not necessarily treat social stuff, but we may encourage treatment in that area, and that's where we might refer to a psychologist or a therapist or something like that, or a rehab or a self-help group like AA or Narcotics Anonymous or something like that.
So you can have a patient that is like a cold call, come off the street and seek your help. It's not just referrals from other therapists or anything like that.
Yeah, okay. It ranges. Some people only take referrals, but let's just say, like, if someone came to me, off the street, and they're saying, man, I'm having problems at work. I can't concentrate on this. I can't concentrate on that. And so they may come in with the whole idea of, I just need to get back to work and start making some money. So, but I would want to talk to them, and I might I want to understand who they are and develop a relationship. The most important thing in mental health field is developing a relationship with your patients, clients, and one that has trust, one that you can disagree, but able to talk things through. And so a lot of times when people come in, they might be frustrated, like, I went in there with a work problem. This guy wanted to talk about, problems with my marriage. Well, I don't think he knows what he's talking about. Well, in fact, it could be related. So then once you develop an issue, then you prepare and develop what type of therapy you want to initiate and how you want to manage that. Could be just as simple as, well, you're very depressed. We'll manage medication. I'll see you, once a month and we'll do the medicines. Some could be like, I think you need therapy weekly, or you need to be in the hospital because you're a danger to yourself or others, and we need to take care of that right away.
Yeah.
You gotta, if someone comes in with their hair on fire, you need to put out the fire because you're not gonna learn anything else about them. So you want to do what you need to do in order to take care of them in the long term. So
That's great. Okay. So I would love to know, what can partners do for themselves to help maintain their mental wellness on the home front while raising kids and taking care of all the shore life responsibilities? Is there something that we can do to
Well-
mentally check in with ourselves, if you will, like to
Well,
make sure
I
we're
mean, we've talked
functioning?
about it, a lot of it already. You can be follow your POCF groups. Okay, you can do. We talked about journaling,
Mhm.
diaries, things like that. Maintain adequate. You don't have to have a lot of friends, just one or two friends, people you trust, who can kind of say, "Hey, man, I think you're having problems," and maintaining that relationship with your partner who's gone,
Mhm.
so that they know that you're struggling. And a lot of people say, "Well, I don't want him to know I'm struggling because then he'll struggle too." Well, maybe, maybe not. Maybe it's something that you can work out together so that you can still maintain the home, and the other partner can maintain the fishing requirements. So
Mhm. Okay. And
communication,
yeah,
that would be key.
yeah.
And don't be afraid to hear from someone who's saying, I think something's not quite right. Don't take it, well, hopefully you don't take it personal. Maybe you might at first, but it's like, well, maybe I really need to trust this person. I need to look into something.
Yeah.
Your physician or whoever,
Mhm.
you know.
So would you say, this might fall into my next question, but I mean, how long have you been doing your profession? Over 30 years?
Yeah,
Okay.
over 30 years.
So over 30 years, you've seen soldiers and families and children on all various states of challenges and traumas and things like that. Is there one, I know there's probably not one thing, but is there something, a commonality that you've seen across the board that has been most helpful for your patients? Like something maybe so simple, or maybe it's not so simple, but what has been the biggest change or the most helpful change for them? Maybe that most helpful activity, maybe it's medicine. I don't know. Is there something that seems like there's a running line of seems to always come back to really help people in the end?
Okay. That's a really good question, by the way. I think my experience is I have a lot of tools in my toolbox to help people with. I mean, I can write a prescription, I can give you advice and all that. But what I think, uh, putting the experience together with the person that comes to me, is most of the time I hear, "Thank you so much. I feel like you really heard what I was saying."
Hmm. Wow.
So listening and developing that trusting relationship. In fact, I had a patient just tell me the other day that they said, I just want to thank you. I, I've seen other people, blah, 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 but you really heard what I was trying to say. And I feel so much better about that. Now, that doesn't make me special. Maybe you have to talk to 10 people before, the last one hears what you're saying, but that's probably the predominant thing I had. And think about it. If someone is having problems, um, and you're able to listen to them, you're probably able to help them. And so, what a relief to have a problem, and then all of a sudden they hear somebody saying, "Well, here's what we can do together to help you. This might be, and this is what I might recommend, and you might want to look into this, and because I think you're having trouble with blah blah blah." It's like, wow, that's what I've been trying to tell people this whole time. I really have a lot of anxiety. I just can't. I'm afraid to talk to people or something. So I think being heard, I think the person that comes to me and feels like they're being heard would be the one key thing.
Wow, that's profound and gets me choked up to think how many people, don't feel that they're getting heard. And I get that. I feel like that in my own life in certain ways. And, thankfully, shout out to my dad and my mom. And dad, you've really helped me a lot recently, and I really appreciate you. And it really was feeling heard. And it's amazing how something that simple that we can all do for each other. And we don't need to have a medical background to just offer each other that space and grace to feel that they have a safe space to speak their mind and speak their heart, and the insecurities, the vulnerabilities. I mean, yeah, so that is really
Exactly.
beautiful. So we're wrapping up here. Thank you so much for being here. This has been great. I feel like we could have cut off into a million different directions, but we stayed true. But maybe I'll have you back and then we can talk about more stuff in the future. That'd be
Yeah, we
great.
can do that.
Yeah.
Let's write all this down and we'll compare.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So recently I polled my community on relationship challenges,
Okay.
and the top relationship challenges that came up were finances, understandably, communication, also understandably. And I feel that we've hit on those levels, but of course you can add on this, and then lack of appreciation.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you want to go down the list or if we, start at one or just focus on one, but with these relationship challenges, how do people go about maybe even being heard on their challenges within that in the relationship, or how do people go about talking to the other person about this? Particularly lack of appreciation. That one really stood out for me.
Well, it's interesting. Those three things are probably the top three for military families and other families that are in similar situations as the folks that you work with. So all three of those are integrated together. Finances, I mean, we can have trouble and argue about finances, and it may not even be finances. It may be something else about appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but it's easier to talk about finances because it's tangible. You can see it, you can count it, and all this stuff. How do you count appreciation?
Yeah.
Well, it goes to that other thing that we just talked about, communication.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough thing for people to hear from someone else that they don't feel appreciated. I mean, their perception is that they're not appreciated when in fact maybe someone is doing everything they can do to show their appreciation, and they just, I don't know what else to do. So it creates anger or something in the other person, or it's just maybe they just don't appreciate them. And so all the possibilities are there.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the thing is, if you're able to talk about these issues and that you cannot come to a conclusion, that might be you've reached a impasse that in your relationship that maybe you need to reach out and get some help with it. There's nothing wrong with going to marriage counseling and just getting a little outside information.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it takes a lot of work from both people to try to listen and hear what the other person is saying, not take it personal, whatever they're saying. I can't even do that all the time, but I don't know. Do you appreciate that answer?
No, I do. I think that
it's a complicated thing. It's not easy. If it was easy, we wouldn't have to be even talking about it. You guys wouldn't have come up with that.
Mm-hmm.
Realizing that it's a possibility, that you may not feel appreciated. The person that goes out working may not feel appreciated because you just don't understand. I'm up 5 days straight.
Mm-hmm.
And the person at home, well, you're up 5 days straight. I'm taking care of 5 kids who have been up 5 days straight. So there has to be somewhere a pause where you listen
Mhm.
and practice listening. And that's hard to do. There are techniques of listening, and you can look it up on the internet, or
Mhm.
there's a lot of like cognitive behavioral therapy and a lot of talk therapies teach you this. But basically, it's like you want to plan it. You want to plan it so that, because this is something that's so important, that you want to be able to completely talk it through to the end. You don't want to have that situation where the phone cuts off, or
Mhm.
or gee, I got to be at work. I will pick this up later. No, you want to, okay, Wednesday nights from 7 to 8. It's always quiet. We need to get talk about things. And one of them might be with, how are we going to talk so that we know we're hearing each other? Well, one of the rules is like, okay, what is it you're trying to tell me? And and then I say back to you, oh, you're trying to tell me that you feel unappreciated. How do you know when you feel unappreciated?
Mhm.
Oh, and well, I feel unappreciated when I'll say something to you and you don't respond, or you might just say yeah, or you don't look at me when you're talking to me.
Mhm.
And so I don't know if you're really listening or if you're just trying to, blow me off or whatever.
Mhm.
So then that would be like, okay, okay, I hear what you're saying. You want me to, if I look at you in the eyes while you're talking and I respond, you'll get the idea that I that I hear what you're saying, and I'm communicating with you, and you'll feel heard.
Mhm.
That's what I'm gonna do. And you got to do that when you're ready, when you're ready to do it. You can't do it when you're, like I said, when your hair's on fire, because it's not going to come out right. But you have to practice it. You have to teach each other how you have to teach each other how you want the other person to talk to you.
Mhm. Yeah, that communication with relationship, man, that has so
That's
many, that's a
us.
spectrum. And it's also exhausting at
It
times.
can be very exhausting.
And also, I'm realizing, no matter if you met when you were young, and, we have people that were in, high school sweethearts, and then we have people that met, in their 50s and 60s. And we talked about this earlier, but just how much you change, not only in a relationship, but as a human being. And maybe what worked for you before doesn't work for you anymore. And maybe you're
Exactly.
trying to make changes for yourself that works for you in your life. And you want your partner, maybe they're not ready to go along that journey with you, but
Yeah.
maybe they're able to at least communicate in a way that not only can you feel supported, but then they can be heard too. And yeah, man, the human experience.
Well, I think that's so important what you're saying. It's like things are, you know, things are great, but then one of a partner says, I want to change how I'm doing this. I want to, I think I need to do more yoga. Let's just say that.
Mhm.
And that's going to require time away and stuff like that. And the other, that would need to be something that I want to make a change in my life. I want to do this, and I'm going to be gone 3 or 4 times a week during this period of time. Um, and I may develop, I may be more quiet as I learn to meditate and stuff like that.
Mm.
And so the other person doesn't have to fully understand it, but they just know, okay, I can expect a change here. And it's not me, it's not my fault that they're more quiet. They're doing meditation. And of course, they're going to be more quiet.
Mm. Yeah, that's
Does
a
that make
great point.
sense?
Yeah, no, that does.
And
It's
so you just kind of let them know that I'm going to do something different. It's not your fault. I love you, and I just need to do this for me.
Mhm.
And so there might be an adjustment where we might need to make.
Yeah, yeah. I recently saw something about that, in the sense of, like, if somebody, one of the people in the relationship, maybe they have a big project coming up, or maybe there's a bunch of stuff going on with the kids that week, and they say, listen, instead of just trying to get through the week like it normally does, and then getting like pissed or irritated, because
Right.
that happens in relationships,
Yeah.
even the best relationships. And to say, this week is going to be really stressful for me. I have this on my plate I'm preparing for. Would you please step up and do X, Y, and Z, instead of having me take on that responsibility. Maybe it's taking the kids to school, maybe it's making dinner,
Yeah.
maybe it's, handling whatever outside family obligations there are. Be like, I just want to let you know, I might not be as present as I normally am, or I might not be as, patient as I normally am, or things like that. But just that kind of communication of, instead of, maybe speaking from personal experience, maybe not, but just saying, instead of just hoping that they pick up on social cues, which is not really always gonna, I learned that, your partner can't read your mind. I don't know if anybody else has this issue, but we can't read each other's minds, y'all. It's crazy.
No, and just expect people are people, man, and there's going to be some times when relationships aren't great. That doesn't mean anything other than we're people and we're growing, developing, we're changing the way we think about things, and having irritations, misunderstandings, and all that. That's just part of the relationship. Just have a way to just have an agreement on how you're going to get out of that. How can we, minimize the harm that might be done. It might be like, I think I need a mental health break. Maybe Saturday I'm going to take off and go see a movie by myself. Okay, well, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that works. I mean,
Whatever.
I think also just doing check-ins whenever things get squirrely, to be like, is each party still in this equally, or is there one person carrying the weight of
Well, it may
the
be.
relationship? And then if that's the case, then that's a whole other topic. And
But there are times when
that's true.
you have to share the load and someone has to carry more of the load. Illness would, somebody gets ill, you would have to share the load. Or take on more of their responsibility. And there's all kinds of illnesses. It could be mental illness, it could be which includes depression, severe anxiety. It could be a physical illness, could be surgery or some other illness like that. It could just be down the dumps and I need a mental health break because I can't figure what's going on in my life. So you can't expect 50% all the time. Sometimes 50% looks like 60% or 80%, but that other person is dealing with something.
Yeah.
And they need you to do that. So there's a bigger load on that other person. They have to give you some.
Yeah. Would you say that to both partners being 100% wanting to make the relationship continue? Because otherwise, if somebody's like kind of stringing someone along, and you're like, wait, what the hell am I doing?
Well, you need to be honest.
Are we still good, or?
Well, you need to be honest with yourself and with your partner. It's like, what how hard do I want to work to keep this relationship together? And if it's like, I can't do this anymore, then plan a way to change that. I mean, even getting out. The worst thing that can happen in a relationship is not the ending of a relationship. That's not the worst thing that can happen. It seems like it. Sometimes the worst thing that can happen is continuing to stay together when it's a very toxic development. Thank God, most people who do get together, I think, have the desires to stay together, and we'll work on it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it seems to be easier today to not work on it. But anyway, that's a whole different topic. But we're talking about, let's just talk about happy things.
Episode number 2. No, I'm kidding. No, but I think also on that point, I think one of the strengths of being in a commercial fishing relationship, and a lot of partners have said this, is the time apart can be very nurturing to either party. And if more relationships did have this dynamic, then maybe they would succeed, because there is room to not figure out life on your own, but kind of.
Well, you guys, I mean, when partners get together, there's certain things that attract them. So it may be, I love the romance of hellos and goodbyes and all that, and so that would be okay, this is ideal then. And then there's some people say, well, I thought I liked that, but after 5 years I just can't do this anymore. And to be able to determine that, and again, that's when you would probably seek help on outside, using your communication skills, listening to each other, making sure that you're hearing what the other person's saying.
Yeah.
And then you can make a decisions that are in your both of your best interests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that was a good positive way to say, I think our time's up here. No, I'm kidding. That was
And
my therapist joke. The psychiatrist joke be like, and we're out of time. Just
Yeah.
kidding. We're not out of time.
Yeah.
We're not your insurance won't cover the rest of this conversation, so we
Yeah.
need to quit it. No, I'm
Yeah.
kidding.
Come back tomorrow.
No, actually, I did want to, speaking of insurance, I do want to ask, what do people do if they feel that, if they don't have health insurance, or maybe the benefits don't cover mental wellness costs? And maybe you kind of
that's
did, touch on this earlier, but are there a free or little pay services that you recommend?
Yeah, I think most communities will have sponsored mental health services for people who aren't able to pay, or we'll have rolling what do you call it? Rolling payments. You only can pay what you can.
Oh, yeah.
And so it's just a matter of you look at the resources online, mental health services. The National Association of Mental Illness, NAMI, they also call it NAMI. It's international actually, and they have a lot of helpful advice, handouts, letters, phone contacts, and things like that they can help you. And they also run groups of people who share common problems, like what we're talking about. Getting groups together. So, and then, there's even a suicide hotline to call, So, usually if you go online, you can actually look it up and say and they'll have a whole list of things to call. If you just for some reason don't have that list or not able to get it, again, think of some people you trust, again, in the spiritual frame, work frame, social frame, people you trust, and be able to talk to them, and you get feedback, and then that would sometimes a good friend can give you some advice that will help you. They don't have to have a graduation certificate. They just sometimes it's just common sense. So
yeah,
talk to someone. That's what I would do. That's what I would say. Anyone, if you think if you don't have the resources, they're out there, and it just may take a little work to find them.
Yeah. And I want to shout out our private communities, because this is so perfect for this. We have a private group chat that people can sign up for, monthly memberships, or you can you can roll on till however long you want, but we're there at the touch of your fingertips, easy app to chat with me and other POCFs all around the world. And you should see some of the things that we've worked through just in the last month. It's really incredible that we're able to be there and not only be there for each other, but we don't have to explain to each other what we're going through, and a backstory, if you will, because we already get it. We understand the stresses of the lifestyle. So we got you. That's going to save you a ton of time. And also our private forum has it's a great resource bank. It's building every month. There's new resources every month. And that's another way that you can also reach out if you're in need, or you want other people that you can connect with on a more intimate level and a more private space. We're there for you. Go to POCFpride.com and you can look up the private communities up in the top menu, and
there you go.
Yeah, or you can DM me, or
you're already doing
me. I do what I can. I'm learning that I took a lot of inspiration from my father, who not only has been a psychiatrist to many, but he's also been a huge, pillar of strength in my life. And I just feel so lucky to have you here, and not only in my life, but for you and my community to gain some of your wisdom. Yeah. So.
Feel the same way. Of all those things I did in my life, being your dad was the most important.
No, I love you, Dad.
You too.
Well, thanks for being here, and I would love to have you back.
Okay.
All right, cool.
Outstanding.
All right, till next time, y'all.
Do that.
Thank you so much for listening. To support our community, I'd so appreciate it if you'd tap the subscribe button to this podcast or write a review. And if you're a POCF who wants to connect further, go to POCFpride.com for weekly blogs and to learn about opportunities to join our private communities. We'd love to have you.